Were you self-sabotaging yourself at that time when you left?
Yeah, really, because I went up the ranks really fast. And well, it took me 7.5 years to be a chief petty officer in administration.
Wow, that is fast.
Only nuclear people can do that. All right. And so what I do for 13 years, not much, just had a good time. So that's self-sabotage.
Did you realize it at the time or no?
No.
Yeah.
And I get out and I would be extremely successful in whatever job I was doing and self-sabotage and get fired or quit. Okay. And I did this over and over and over again. But after about 10 years, it's like, okay, I don't think I'm broke. I don't think that there's something wrong with me, but something's there that's keeping me from being successful. And so I started looking into different ways I could help people. And I found one.
This is the Onward Podcast, and I'm your host, Emily Harmon. My guest today is Terry Earthwind Nichols. After standing on the edge of a 28-story building, Terry heard a voice saying, "I have something for you to do." Within 6 months, he had created a process that helps his clients find a forgotten memory from early childhood that has consistently been controlling their life and driving their behaviors. His process is called Repetitive Behavior Cellular Regression. And with this process, everything is in its place and one's entire life makes sense for the very first time in a long time. After leading a life of self-sabotage, Terry was relieved to get off of the proverbial merry-go-round himself. Terry works with people who are at their wits' end. They know something is in the way of their success, and they just can't put their finger on it. Listen to this interview and learn how repetitive behavior cellular regression works, and learn who's a good candidate for this process. This Onward Podcast episode is brought to you by my coaching business, Emily Harmon, Coaching and Consulting. I hope you enjoy the show.
So we're live, Terry, and welcome to the Onward Podcast.
I'm glad to be here. Emily, we've had some great conversations, and Onward Podcast is a very cool podcast. You've got a great message with your people. And I'm very honored that you asked me to be on here. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I love your topic tonight, which is like how to stop self-sabotaging and procrastination. And in the paperwork that you sent over to me as we were preparing for this, your paperwork says it's not your, and the your is all in caps, it's not your fault. So it's not my fault that I procrastinate sometimes, huh? Whose fault is it?
It's this little demon deep inside. That's what everybody's told.
Yeah.
Actually, in my research over the last 12 years, we have found, as a couple of noted psychologists from 100 years ago, they were looking for memories or significant emotional events that occurred in childhood that affects the way people behave as adults. Well, I found out the magic pathway to find that amnesic event with my clients. And now we're doing it in 6 languages, 6 continents, 17 countries now, 26 US states, with success right here online. So it's pretty amazing.
About yourself and how you ended up discovering that.
I am a self-sabotager.
Ooh.
Over and over again. We share the US Navy.
Right.
And I was the kid who was the first one to achieve the highest rank in Cub Scouts. And then I was on that way. I quit and moved on, did other things. And then I was on my way to the top, just short of the top, quit and moved on.
In the Navy or
in Explorers and Boy Scouts in high school, right?
Oh,
and then I joined the Navy, and
okay.
I joined the Navy to be a chief. I made chief and I quit. I didn't want to go any further. I just hung out and finished my 20 years. And I was a recruiting dream walking in the door. I had the high school diploma, everything. And a guy gave me a test and he goes, "Sit down, son, let's do some paperwork." what do you want to be in the Navy? I said, a sailor. He says, that's the answer I'm looking for. And that's all I wanted to be. I didn't care if I was what we would call a deck person or a gunner or whatever. I ended up in personnel, but that's okay. That turned out to be my strength. And at the 20-year point, they're starting to talk to me. So, Chief, what are you going to do? We've got some next duty station opportunities for you, blah, blah, blah. And I said, my deal's for 20 years. I'm leaving. You can't leave. And I go, oh, I sure can, with my retirement intact. And I did. I said, my deal with the United States.
Were you self-sabotaging yourself at that time when you left?
Yeah, really, because I went up the ranks really fast. And well, it took me 7.5 years to be a chief petty officer in administration.
Wow, that is fast.
Only nuclear people can do that. All right. And so what I do for 13 years, not much, just had a good time. So that's self-sabotage.
Did you realize it at the time or no?
No. Yeah. And I get out and I would be extremely successful in whatever job I was doing and self-sabotage and get fired or quit. Okay. And I did this over and over and over again. But after about 10 years, it's like, okay, I don't think I'm broke. I don't think that there's something wrong with me, but something's there that's keeping me from being successful. And so I started looking into different ways I could help people. And I found one. It's called Stephen Ministry. It's a one-to-one crisis intervention, non-denominational ministry out of St. Louis, Missouri, that's international. It's global. Mm-hmm. So I started helping people with that. And when I was helping with somebody one night, I took on a hunch and left the traditional way of asking questions and said, hey, close your eyes and tell me what you smell. I know smell is the number one trigger for memory recall. And she did. And she popped her eyes open and she said, oh my God, I smell gas. There must be a fire. And I said, what, gasoline, diesel? I'm thinking natural gas, but I wanted to qualify her. And she said, no, natural gas. There's got to be a fire. This is an electric building. I said, well, something tells me you didn't smell that until the instant I told you asked you what the deal was. So close your eyes right now. See if you can smell the gas right now. She says, no, I can't. I said, good. Just relax, take a couple of breaths, and let's try something. Go back in history in your memories and see if you have a memory where you smell that gas. And she did. And that started repetitive behavior cellular regression. It's a question and answer sequence where we use the 5 senses to inventory memories instead of the traditional way of talking through the history or the story of memory. Now, why we do that is when you get to a memory and you freeze frame it into a photograph, you take away the motion. If there's no motion, there's no emotion. Mm-hmm. Okay. If there's no emotion, no ego asking questions. The person is closed eyes, they're perfectly present, and they inventory a memory using their 5 senses in a specific way. We have a sequence. Mm-hmm. Here's the key, though. If you and I are sitting we're 5 or 6 years old, and we're sitting on the end of a dock in a lake, there are certain things I would expect to hear, see, smell, whatever. And if there's something extra there, we pay attention to that. Missing out or can't be remembered information. And so we go through memory 1, which is kind of random, and then memory 2. And then when we finish memory 3, that client is in a memory that was set in amnesia that's high emotional value as a young child at that time, usually pre-language. You don't have anybody to talk to about what just happened. So what do? Amnesia comes in to protect you. Amnesia is you're not broken, you're just being protected. But what we do is when we go back in time using the 5 senses, we go way back here to the brainstem and work forward where the 5 senses are located. So we literally come in the back door with somebody in the back door of that protected memory. And not only do they remember the memory exactly, but the person's face that created this emotional event.
And too, like if someone's watching and they're like, well, that might not work for me because I don't remember my memories. You're saying you can help them remember.
Yeah, most of my clients don't remember anything before first grade or whatever. And when we're done with this 2.5, 3 hour session over Zoom, not only do they remember this memory where we helped them to, they remember their whole childhood. Okay. They can remember stuff that used to be in photo. I used to have a photograph of me and my father. I was told that was me in his arms at 3 months. I never identified with that. Nah, that's not me. When I went through, I finally trained somebody good enough to help me. And when I went through it, not only could I believe that was me at 3 months in my dad's arms, I could see it was my Aunt Mabel who took the photo.
So how did this help you figure out that you were why you were self-sabotaging?
Self-sabotage is a triggering event. So it's highly emotional. You have a lot of success, you're feeling good, and then it's time for you to go back to normal. So you've been up here for a while, you've had some success. Now it's time to go back to normal. Well, this amnesic event triggers and controls that so that you have the high of the success, but when you come back down, it's like the wave in an ocean. When you have a high, that's great. But guess what happens afterwards? You come down here. But when you're down here, this triggering device gets you thinking about it over and over and over again and gets you doubting your success. So pretty soon you're in an imposter syndrome situation or PTSD, can't shut off the movie player. Those kinds of things comes from that protection. Okay. It's nothing wrong back there. There's nothing broken in the back of the mind. It is protecting you so well from the original memory. It has you thinking about other stuff all the time. That's where self-sabotage comes in. Procrastination is, I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it because I know I'm going to get the high, but I don't want to go here. So I don't want to do it. So procrastination, you start making up things. I used to do it for years, most of my adult life. I'd make up excuses not to do something, right? And then I would get energy spurts where I would do too much and feel bad about it when I was done because I'd start doubting my success with, why don't you do that all the time?
Right.
You do that all the time. And then you go and you fall right back into self-sabotage and procrastination.
Interesting. I can see a few people are watching. If you have any questions for Terry, please post them or questions or comments. So why do you call it, so you call it repetitive behavior, cellular regression?
Right. We call repetitive behaviors anytime the adult person makes a decision to do something or not do something and fail to follow up 2 or more times. That's a repetitive behavior. PTSD is an excellent example. You can't shut off the movie player. You get connected to a memory or an event or a triggering song or whatever it is. A smell is huge, and you can't turn it off. Number one, you can't turn it off because you don't know that there's an on-off switch because this protection device is hidden that from you. Somewhere between 4 and 7 years old, the mind matures to a point where it can control repetitive thoughts, but only if it is consciously aware that it can do that. If there is a deflection system involved with this amnesia, it hides that from you. So you don't know that there's an on-off switch, much less where to find it. Now, when you go through the CR process, that's what we call this VIP 30-day session. When you go through the CR process, you find the on-off switch. And you can turn it on and off all you want.
Finding that on-off switch with your clients. How many people have come through it and give like a success rate?
I just finished my 146th in a row successful CR session.
Wow. So can you tell us some of the things, I mean, without revealing who the clients are or whatever, can you tell us some of the things that people are discovering, like some examples?
There's some bad stuff out there, but let me tell you about the innocent things.
Yeah.
All right. Because you guys that are watching and the ones that are going to listen to the recording,
Right.
let me tell you about a couple of clients ago, 4 months old. Daddy is a movie and photographer nut. He's always taking pictures of her. She is sitting on the floor upright. Behind Daddy, who's taking the photos, is her cousin. And he's acting up a little bit. He's a few years older. He's 4 or 5 years old. And Uncle spanks him. He starts crying. And Uncle spanks him again because he's crying. And this little girl at 3 months old is going, I don't understand. Why is he hurting him, making him cry? When I cry, somebody feeds me. When I cry, somebody changes me. When I cry, somebody, picks me up. But they're spanking him and leaving him cry on the floor. I don't understand. Boom, trigger. Because she's only 3 months old, she can't say, hey, Dad, what is that? That's not fair. She has no language skills. So that became a PTSD event over time. And it's a very innocent thing, and it happens more than a lot of people think. Yeah, there's some bad stuff where somebody, an adult, did some bad things to kids. That happens.
But with the 4-month-old example that you just gave, how did that end up impacting her later on in terms of like maybe self-sabotaging herself or procrastination?
At 30 years old, okay, some years later, she got in a car accident that wasn't hers. And that memory of that child being beat and the person's little kid that was in the car was screaming in the same manner, she connected them to and created a PTSD event. Now, she was a friend of ours, so we were able to connect with her right away, and she knew what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So she contacted me and said, Terry, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. She had no idea of the 3 months old, but
Right.
I can't shut this off. You say you shut this off for people. Can you do this? And I said, sure. And so we got her into a session, and 3 hours later, we found this 3-month-old sitting on the floor.
And that helps her. How does that help her in the future with that PTSD event? She understands it more?
3 years later, no more PTSD events, no more anxiety, no more thinking about the crash over and over and over again. When she thinks about the crash, it's an event, like a page in her history book.
Right.
Not like people who are suffering from PTSD, they'll wake up in the middle of the night in a panic. All right.
Right.
She don't have any of that. Another one that's a very good one, ladies and gentlemen, is one night I was referred a young man who heard about me, who called me, and he was a veteran, Afghan veteran, 3 combat tours. He called me and he said, look, dude, I got a Glock. It's locked and loaded to my temple. You can't help me. I'm doing myself right now. Okay. I am a veteran. I know who you are and I know what you are. Okay. And I've stood on the edge of a building, of a 28-story building, one step from eternity. And I'm here talking to you now. I can tell you, you're going to get through this. Now, veteran to veteran, here's what we're going to do. You're going to make the weapon safe. You're going to put the weapon on one side, and you're going to put the magazine on the other side on the chair that you're sitting in. And you're going to come up, in those days it was Skype. You're going to come up on Skype with me, and we're going to take care of this now. And we did. It was about 3 hours, 4 hours later, we found out what happened in his early childhood, who triggered these events to be recurring. He was in a firefight in Afghanistan, lost 2 of his best buddies. Okay. And that really, really messed him up. And he blamed himself for not protecting him. Well, he couldn't protect him. They're in a firefight.
Right.
Okay. But, when you're out of reason, that doesn't enter.
Right.
But what we did find out is that triggering device, when he was 6 months old, neutralized Then this event that in that firefight now has no emotional value. He has fond memories of of his fallen buddies, but no triggering, no suicide ideation. 6 years ago, we did that. Okay. He no longer owns guns in his house. He has an national nonprofit that he's running for other veterans. He's doing extremely well. No suicide ideation, no PTSD, no treatment for medications for those either. He's off of all of it. That's what we do, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you been able to talk to the VA about this? Or
I have.
Yeah.
We are VIP, vendor certified. And, I'm not a PhD and I'm not backed by a medical study. So this is a very slow process.
Yeah, I bet.
One of these days, I'm going to be fortunate enough to have a client who's high enough in the VA or somewhere who can affect decisions. I'm going to take him or her through the CR process, and they're going to go, I will get this in the VA.
Yeah.
Because it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. So why were you standing on a building 28 feet? Is that what you said?
28 stories.
Why were you?
Top of my condo building. I was done, had nothing to look forward to at life at that point. This was back in 2009. The antidepressants I was working with at the VA didn't work. And I went up on the roof just to get into fresh air. And next thing I know, I'm over the roof retainer on the edge. And I was as calm as I am sitting here talking to you right now. I was done. There was no crying. There was nothing. A light breeze, beautiful day, nothing to blow me off, nothing to keep me on, nobody around. And ladies and gentlemen, take this for what it's worth. Some little voice or something behind me said, turn around, I have work for you. I turned around, climbed over that wall, nobody there. And I went back down to the condo I was living at. And within 4 months, I was working with this lady on Skype, and RBCR was created. I got work for you. And we've never looked back.
Wow. As you reflect on that, who was that saying that to you?
God, creator, whatever you want to call it. Guardian angel. The interesting part about it, Emily, is I am not able to ascertain whether it was a female or even a male voice. Mm-hmm. I just heard the words. And I turned around like I was in the Navy. Turned around, I got work for you. I turned around and there was nobody there, but I didn't care there was nobody there. It didn't even connect with me at the time. After I was downstairs in my condo, my then girlfriend wasn't home. I could just reflect for a while. I went, wow, did I really hear that? Does it matter? Mm-hmm. I'm here.
Have you heard anything like that since?
No.
No. Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is your middle name Earthwind?
I'm just a lucky guy. No, I'm teasing. His Excellency Ambassador is my title. I am a global refugee ambassador on behalf of United Refugee Green Council of Cyprus. That is an actual title. I am a Native American. I am a Chickamauga. You don't hear about us very often. We're one of those other tribes. My tribal name is Earthwind Gado Onule, his breath across the earth, because my grandmother that named me knew that I traveled a lot and that it would protect me. Well, I use it nowadays, both as an identification as a Native American man, but it's my brand. Yeah. If somebody like we're on right now, and Emily, you said evolutionaryhealer.com, for instance, I tell people, well, how do we get a hold of you? I tell people, Google Terry Earthwind Nichols. There's one in the world. If you Google Terry Nichols, you get 17,000 in America alone. So the branding is beautiful. Okay? Yeah. It's easy to remember.
So you don't have to remember.
And thank you.
Google your name. Terry
Yeah.
Earthwind Nichols.
Yeah. It has everything. The YouTube channels, social media. I just went over 46,000 on followers on LinkedIn, for instance, and almost 5,000 on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But all of my websites, everything about me can be found very easily by Googling my name. And so I tell everybody, just Google the name and get whatever you feel like you want to do.
So what's your greatest fear around death? It seemed like you weren't too concerned about it when you were standing up on the...
Not at all on that roof.
Yeah.
My journey finding, it wasn't very long after I was on the roof that I connected with my tribe. And their connection with life and death is we're just here as a spiritual being in a solid form, and we'll be back someday. And while you're here, you're on a journey. And as repetitive behavior cellular regression started to really take off and be consistent, that's the big thing. It happens this way every single time when we do this sequence. The key is I'm not afraid of death anymore. That's coming. And when it gets here, it gets here. I'm so happy. And so I work 7 days a week. Well, actually, I don't work. I love this stuff. Okay. I'm often up between 4 and 6 in the morning every day. And when you're achieving and you're helping people, you don't get sick, you don't burn out, and you don't worry about leaving the company. That's a big thing about what we teach with the consortium model, but that's a different day.
So Carla asks, does your practice help with diseases and cancer?
We haven't, I don't know. Okay. There has been some discussion that there's a theory. If a person who is mentally healthy, the odds of their bodies becoming physically healthy are significantly increased. So if you went through the CR process and got rid of this negative stress running through your body all the time, it could have some benefits in diseases and cancer. But to say that it cures it or directly helps it, I don't think I could say that.
Hi, Maria. Thanks for letting us know you're here. Maria was my guest a few weeks ago. So, yeah. She's an engineer at the Naval Air Systems Command and Mother of the Year for Maryland for 2021. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree with that when you're mentally fit and healthy in your thoughts and you're stress-free or not as stressed, you don't let circumstances get to you, that contributes to your body being healthy too.
Well, what I understand of stress is good stress and bad stress are exactly the same reaction to the body. Good stress doesn't last as long as bad stress. We hang on to it. And that deteriorates the body, not, the opposite, because we don't hold on to good stuff. We don't get up here and hold on to it. We have a tendency to hold on to this stuff, and that works against us.
Right, definitely. Since the last time you and I spoke, I just started doing some coaching along this line of work where we train ourselves to go. I went in this program and we train ourselves to go from the right side of or the left side of our brain, where all our saboteurs are that cause all of our stress. And mental fitness is a measure of how quickly you can come back and be in the present moment and be more in the sage and your compassion and curiosity. And instead of letting circumstances just dictate how you think and feel, you are able to catch yourself and then bring yourself back. So I think that's very helpful with regards to stress.
Yeah.
So Martin asked, what about with people with arrhythmia issues? It appears to have unknown triggers physically.
That's an interesting question.
Research to go back and do.
I am liking this. That's a very good question. I don't know what it would do with the arrhythmia. What I do know is when my clients come out of a CR session, they have profound inner peace, and it stays for quite a long time. Now, we're emotional beings, so we're going to spike every so often. The key is part of the process is to self-repattern yourself for future anxiety attacks or whatever. where you ask yourself 3 questions. Which of my 5 senses just went off when you go into an attack? What memory do I have immediately of that sense? And most importantly, who's the face in the memory I see? That is a person that we neutralize, and we teach them how to do that. And within 5 to 7 seconds, you're completely calm out of a triggering attack.
Okay? And that's a lot of like noticing, being aware, being self-aware, because I know for the longest time, I didn't notice as much stuff. I just was busy. You know, my busyness kept me from noticing stuff. And I've since really worked at that because I don't want to be busy. I don't want to be doing. I want to be a being, a human being. I want to learn how to be. And I just, my hyperachiever gets at me sometimes. And so I think what you're saying too is just, you know, being aware enough to notice something and then getting curious about it and yourself.
Yeah. You know, one of my quotes internationally is, presence is the point where manifestation becomes action. So when you release past and you release the future, all you have is present. And when you're there, whatever it is that you're thinking about or engaged in becomes easier to see. It manifests, come to light. And so those are different ways that we have helped our clients after the CR process, the 3 questions and doing different things like that, you know, because things are going to happen of high emotional value. Just going to happen, you know. Right. If you're a veteran's been in firefights and stuff like that, and you suddenly smell gun smoke for some reason, trigger. However, if you've been through the CR process, you go, gun smoke. Wonder where that came from.
Yeah.
Not a trigger. There's a key. And it's self-repatterning. I can give you mantras that you love and say 100 times a day, but they're not yours. Right. Self-repatterning, you give yourself the credit for your stuff. You own it. It's yours. Yeah. You can be proud of it.
Yeah, definitely. So who's a good candidate for this? Maria says, I believe if you get your mind right, you can get your body right. And hi, Russ. Yeah, I agree too. I mean, if you get your mind right, you can get your body right. Yes.
Maria. Yeah. So how do we get the mind right? The repetitive behavior cellular regression system is for anybody who repeats situations over and over again. You're a profound self-sabotager, or I've helped alcoholics. One and done. They go to AA to help everybody else. Now they don't go to AA to help themselves. Okay. The key to what we're talking about here is not finding new tricks to use. It's finding out what's driving the behavior, neutralizing it, and then moving forward. Because then,
well, I was going to say, for an alcoholic, what can you give us an example of somebody that you've helped that was an alcoholic? Like, what was their memory, or what did they discover was driving it?
I had a lifelong veteran alcoholic, mom and dad alcoholics, grandmother and grandfather, both sides alcoholics. Okay. Everybody drank. He learned to drink at 6 years old. Okay. So he'd been a drunk all his life. And he came into the Army before those kinds of tests came up. All right. And he did finally quit drinking and went through AA, and went to 3 to 5 meetings a week and those kinds of things because he felt like he needed them. What happened when he was a young child, he saw his mother having sex with his father's boss. Okay. He's the oldest child. The next child looks different than the other 4 kids.
Wow. And
this happened in September of that year. And he chronologically triggered and went into deep depression and was hospitalized 5 to 7 weeks every September for years until we found that. Now it's been, I was 21, so 5 years. It's been 5 years now. He has not had the September event.
Wow.
Okay. And he doesn't go to AA groups to participate. He goes to lead them, give them help, and give them hope. Talk about the CR process too. So look, I found this. It's up to you to do anything with it, but this is the way it is. That's another group that's slow to move.
AA? AA is Alcoholics Anonymous, another group. You mean that is slow to, try to take on what you're doing?
Yeah. Like he says, my vet, he says, there's 13 steps, not 12. Number one step's CR process. It, neutralizes the problem. And then you go through the 12 steps and they all make sense. There's a huge amount of people don't get past 7. Okay. Yeah. They fall back and start again. And Carla has something. Carla has Terry considered helping children of divorce before self-sabotage takes over? Great question. Let me respond. We have a nonprofit, Evolutionary Healer Incorporated, and we go out, we find money to take a veteran through who's suffering from complex PTSD or whatever through the CR process. And then we take their spouse caregiver through the CR process. And here's the piggy. We've taken 16-year-olds and older children through the CR process. Here's why. We know that PTSD perpetuates through the family. The kids are going to mirror their adults. All right. Suicide, all of that. 3 out of 5 survivors of somebody who takes their life with suicide will commit suicide before the end of their life. 45%. That's terrible, but it's real. Now, if we shut off the perpetuation by taking the primary through the CR process, shuts that off, the caregiver spouse, that companion fatigue can be shut off. Then we take the children through and nobody else is affected. It is stopped. So great question.
Yeah. Wow. So you have one of your questions that you typically get asked is, where did Sigmund Freud leave off and where have you been able to go in your research?
Sigmund Freud had the perfect idea. Here's what Sigmund Freud did for those of you who are not familiar. I learned about him in one semester of high school in psychology class because I had to take the class. It was the only thing in that hour that I could take. I already had 2 study halls. So I had to take it. And in that semester, we studied Freud and the fact that he thought that people's behavior as adults were affected by what happened, something that significant that happened to him in childhood. So he was working in the late 1800s, just before the turn of the century, in Austria and Germany with hypnosis. He would hypnotize his clients and try to get them back into early childhood memories to see if he could find this event that started everything. Well, he got short-circuited because in that same time frame, there was a hysteria across Central Europe about bad people hypnotizing good people to go steal for them. So they outlawed hypnosis in any form throughout Europe. And that cut him off from his number one way of trying to figure that out.
Oh, wow.
So about 15 years later, just after the turn of the century, he started using cocaine to try and help them to get high and get back there. Not a lot of luck. And he started, then bad things started talking, people started talking bad about cocaine, and that was shut off. So he started using it himself. Turned out to be an addict and committed suicide in 1939. But he was close and he had the right idea. I have found the alternate neural pathway to circumvent the protected lost memory and come in literally from behind. Because back here on the brain stems where all the senses are. So we literally come forward where everybody else works from the front back. So Freud, thank you very much for starting the behavior and the idea. I've proven it. So you did all right, just 100 years late.
So like, what's a session with you like? Because you're not hypnotizing your client.
No.
But you said 3 to 4 hours later. So is someone sitting in there 3 to 4 hours later? And, here's the thing. I mean, I could sit here and try to remember my childhood memory from, way back when, but it's not going to come up. How do you get it to come up? that's your secret sauce, but is there anything that you can
We
share?
start by disengaging the thought system and the deflection system, and we'd say this: there are no good memories, there are no bad memories. They're simply memories. Now, I'd like you to go back in time to a memory that you enjoy remembering with friends and family, and tell me when you get there and where you're physically located. And so I didn't say it was a good memory or bad memory. It's a memory that
Right.
I like to talk about. Okay. So when you get back there, eyes are closed, right? Okay. I'm sitting on a park bench. I'm 6 years old and it's at a family reunion. Okay. Now I'd like you to freeze frame the photograph, the memory into a photograph. Now, again, I said this earlier, if there's nobody motion, there's no emotion. So
Right.
the person has their eyes closed and they're completely shut off of the physical world. They're listening to you, paying attention, fully present. Now tell me what you smell, because that's the number one memory we call sense. The next memory depends on what we discover in the first memory. But again, like I was talking earlier, if you and I were sitting on that bench, I would expect to see certain things, hear certain things. I'm a kid, taste certain things. And if they're not there, there's got to be a reason. Then we go back farther in time to another memory and we do the same thing. If the same missing things are in that memory that was missing in the first memory, there's an indication of an issue. Mm. Then finally, we go back to an estimation that I make as a practitioner at the very beginning of the CR session of a memory in a certain time frame. And that's the secret sauce. I'm not going to tell you how to do
Right.
that. When we finish that memory, we have bypassed the normal neural pathway back to that area by creating a new one using sensory. So we are back there and we come into the back of a memory. Now remember, folks, you take in about 2 million memories a day. So there's lots to play with. So we go back in there and the client comes into literally the back door or the unprotected part of the memory for the first time since it happened.
Wow.
It's powerful. And it's not scary because you're fully present there. You know, you haven't been in any kind of emotion for the last 2.5, 3 hours. And you don't even know it's been 2.5, 3 hours because you're so engaged in being present with the responses. This sequence is so perfect that I read it word for word every single time. And so do my people all over the world.
Because
it's that good.
So what about somebody who has like ADHD or, just has a hard time being present? How do you help them become present?
Same. Something drives them to do that. Now, when they were children and they were being protected by this thing, their feel-good stuff was to be busy, not think about whatever it was, because it's slowly becoming amnesia. And from that, they get some sense of stability and reference to self. Okay. Some people start tapping, other people just do 30 things at once. Not a bad deal in the Navy, but not such a good deal if you're a pastor in a church. So, excuse me. Let me just grab it.
Or not a good bad thing if you're a senior executive in the Navy, but then when you're retired like me and still going a million miles a minute, I've really worked on that. But
yeah, being busy is not a bad thing.
Right.
Being busy unconsciously is.
Right.
And something drives that. Mm-hmm. And because it's been happening all of the person's life, that memory or that vibration is normal.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens to my clients about 2 weeks after their CR session, the body starts saying, "Hey, Terry, you've been having fun, but it's time to get back to the old Terry."
Right.
Okay. So what does that mean? You start thinking some of the things that you used to think. And if you don't stay present, we have a couple of calls during that time frame to keep you out of there. But it's very easy to fall back under old behaviors if you're not fully present with what your thought process is. Okay.
Exactly.
We as the practitioners, we pay very close attention to way you spoke before the CR session and the way you spoke after the session. And then each of the 3 more times in the 30 days that you're with us, we look out for those original comments, original vernacular.
Okay, I see. So how many people do you have trained? And you say all over the world, like where is everybody?
I have myself as one grandmaster. Nobody knows better than me. And I have 6 masters. I had heart surgery 6 years ago to fix a birth defect. And that's not a guarantee you're coming out the other side. So I took 5 of my superstars and I taught them everything I know, made them masters. So now they can teach. So I have myself, 5 masters, and 48 practitioners in I have practitioners in 8 countries. I have clients in 17 countries, 26 US states.
Wow.
And they do this in 6 languages.
How do most of them find you?
I usually speak from the stage, except for last year and so far most of this year. But I do a lot of podcasts. Mm-hmm. I'm all over the place. Like I mentioned earlier, I have 46,000 people following me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the majority of our people, I pick what conferences I go to because my target market, my ideal clients are there. And so I'll pay to speak on stage. Mm-hmm. And there has never been a time since 2012 when we started this company that we went and participated in a conference where we didn't make our money back many times over.
Yeah. So how would you describe your ideal client? I mean, because it seems like is it somebody that notices repetitive patterns in their lives, or is it somebody who suffers from post-traumatic stress, or is it somebody that is self-sabotaging and procrastinating? I mean, what language do you use to find your ideal client?
In September of every year, I go after people who are in suicide ideation because that's the international month of suicide. Uh-huh. Mental health in March. You know, it's about message and being consistent with your message. Mm-hmm. This message, when it resonates, you're in. You're at a point of enough is enough. You know there's something wrong and nobody can fix it. And you're tired of taking the drugs and all the other stuff. You know, a side effect of RBCR, repetitive behavior cellular regression, is almost, I would say, around 80% or give or take 5% of our clients who were taking various mood medications before CR session were off of them within a year with doctor's supervision. We always tell people, the big pharma's not going to like it someday, but that's too bad. But we tell people, number one, we're not medical, so we don't diagnose. What you have is what you have. When you're done and you're feeling great and your life is moving forward, we tell them, do not change your prescription for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And if at 3 months, everything is still fine, go talk to your doctor about coming off slowly. Because, you know, you come off your meds, you just stop taking them, for instance, you can have a heart attack or something.
You can't just
you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And we are very clear, don't.
Right. Okay. So you also on LinkedIn, you host this little show. It's 5 minutes. I was on it. What Are You Doing series?
Yeah.
You highlight a lot of different people and ask them, what are you doing now?
You know, it's in year 2 now. In lockdown last year, one morning I got up and about the first 10 posts in LinkedIn that I read were 10 things to think about now, 10 things to do about now, and all these kinds of things, you know, and I go, you know, this is all great content and this is good stuff, people, but what are you doing? Mm-hmm. What are you doing? This could be fun. I know that if you do a video of 5 minutes or less on LinkedIn, people will watch the video, at least for 30 seconds or more. So the watch rate and the open rate is extremely high for 5 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes, you probably have to know the person you're going to watch or whatever.
Right.
But 5 minutes or less, they'll click on it. And what are you doing? It's like, that's very unique. What are you doing? I kind of like that idea. So my fellow coaches and consultants and different people that are close to me who are doing some kind of cool stuff, I said, hey, let's get on. Let me record you for 5 minutes, answering one question. What are you doing? You talk about anything you want. You got a book coming out, that's great. If you got a new service coming out or something like that, that's great too. And I'm going to do it to replace my weekly broadcast email. I learned a long time ago in marketing that 1 p.m. in your time zone, for me, it's Eastern, 1 p.m. on Eastern on Thursdays has the highest open rate of emails.
Oh, really?
Okay?
1 p.m. Thursday.
1 p.m. on Thursdays, folks, write that down. 1 p.m. on Thursday, I'll repeat it. Now, I have patterned my people and prospects. I just did a 2-minute live with Tuesday. Every Tuesday morning at 5:45 Eastern, I do 2-minute live on video on LinkedIn. But what I do is put something unique that somebody's actually doing out there that somebody can resonate with. I get exposure, they get exposure, like you and I did.
Yeah.
I posted it, you came on to mine, you reacted with a heart or whatever it was, and you commented on it. That raises us in the algorithm. Then you shared it to your page, where I came, reacted, higher than a like. Write that down, folks, higher than a like.
Right.
And I commented again. Now we've doubled the algorithm reach of people that could see it. Not only our primary connections, but our second and third degree connections that follow us that we're not aware of. And if they comment, then they comment and it comes onto their feed and their people. And I went from January 1st, 2020, I'm going to do a webinar on this, on how to do it. January 1st, 2020, I had 1,781 followers on LinkedIn.
Right now you're at 46,000.
January 1st, 2021, I had 22,000. I now have 46,000 headed for 50,000 in the next 2 weeks. Okay, well, by mid-June, I'm estimating 50,000. So there's some jewels in this, okay? Right. Now people see me in my target marketplace twice a week, Tuesday early, or they can see it later in the day on a recording for 2 minutes. The open rate's amazing. And my little 5-minute gig with people from all kinds of backgrounds.
When you say higher than a like, you mean like clap on the hands clapping or the heart or the...
Right. If you react with a like, that means one thing. Any other reaction other than like gets you higher in the algorithm. All right.
Got it.
And so more people see you. And if you get a large enough group of people, like my 2-minute Tuesday from last Tuesday, not this week, but last week, I had a huge amount of people like and insight, the little light bulb, who were third degrees. All of their people saw my thing. And I went up like 1,000 followers in one day.
Wow. That's awesome.
Okay. So this all works. And okay. Because you're putting out stuff that people understand, and they probably, if they don't need it, they know somebody who does.
Yeah. I mean, there's somebody listening, somebody watching that knows somebody who's like, oh, that I need to introduce my friend to Terry because, he can help her or whatever.
I just talked to somebody who was a referral of a third degree who said, this guy puts out good stuff. You got to talk to him. I think he can help you.
Yeah.
And so she went to the website and got my info and clicked on an RBCR information link. And we talked for 30 minutes. She'll be going through the CR process next week.
I was going to ask you, so, how long would it take for somebody to get an appointment if they're interested? As we wrap this up, if somebody has a question, go ahead and post it because we're getting ready to finish up.
There isn't an hour in a 24-hour day that I have not been in a CR session, ladies and gentlemen, because I work globally. All right. And depending on the need, the veteran with the Glock, I stopped everything I was doing that night and we stayed up until 3 a.m. until it was done. Okay. That is, how necessary is it for this young lady who reached out to me? Self-sabotage is a lot about it. And she didn't have a whole lot of time in the coming 5, 6, 7 days. So 8 days from the time that we put it in there, we both had time in a right time of day where the kids are at school.
Mm-hmm.
They're still in school where she is, and there's nobody home. So there's nobody to bother her while we're going through the CR process.
Got it. So somebody who wants to do it with you, go through that CR process with you, should probably have a block of time of what, 4 or 5 hours? Or
I tell people, well, we send them an email, but
Yeah.
block out 4 hours. It usually takes 2.5, 3 hours.
Mhm.
But you know what? You're going to want some reflection time when that's over. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, I know I did. Okay. I invented this, ladies and gentlemen, and it took 3.5 years for me to get somebody good enough to deflect my deflection system, because I created the system. And when I was done and found my block, I just wanted to just sit.
Yeah.
And I lived here in Asheville at the time. I went outside. It was summertime. I went outside and just sat there all by myself in the dark, and like, wow, not only does this work, it worked for me.
And it's like, wow, a lot of things in my life make sense now.
And the, you know, the suicide thoughts and all the rest of that go away. And when they do come back, you get to ask yourself the 3 questions, right? We teach people how to go there, you know, because the deflection system after a while is going to check in and say, Emily, it's been a couple of years. You've been on this high. Let me get you back to normal, because that's my job.
Mhm.
Okay. And you can say to yourself, oh, whoa. No. This is not who I am. I'm not doing this. I'm out of there. I'm not going back.
Mhm.
Right? Presence is the point where manifestation becomes action. So whatever is getting you in the funk at that point, you start seeing answers for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's powerful.
So as we wrap this up, any last bit of advice for the people that are listening now and that are going to listen in the future when I publish it as a regular podcast?
Google Terry Earthwind Nichols. You don't have to worry about the title so much. Americans don't anyway. And it will give you everything. I have white papers published, all kinds of stuff, you know. And well, there's our Facebook.
You're on Facebook and Twitter.
LinkedIn. You know, I'm everywhere, and I'm available.
Mhm.
And we're available in 6 languages. So, you know, that's not a big deal either. Especially my Hebrew client in Israel is real glad of it. Okay.
Wow.
So reach out. You know, the conversation isn't anything. And for those of you who like to read, there's a lot of content in those white papers
That are on your website, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Terry, for being on the Onward podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Please share this episode with somebody who would benefit from hearing it. And take a listen to some other Onward podcast episodes. I've published nearly 150 Onward podcast episodes, and you can listen to them from my website, emilyharmon.com, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And if you like the Onward podcast, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review. Let's move onward together.